Alright, so something that I noticed on the alpha build 26032 is that Destruction Locks also got some changes. I just wanted to go over them. First, let's start with the Destruction rotation. Before talents, your rotation is keep up this dot, immolate. Okay. You have a 2 charge, short cooldown nuke button that's an instant cast called Conflagrate. It's 12 seconds before haste. And then you're going to be dumping your soul shards 2 at a time with Chaos Bolts and building them back up with Incinerate, which is your filler nuke. Here's a demonstration of it in action. Immolate, obviously, prioritize Conflagrate, dump shards when available, and you do that with Chaos Bolts, and then Incinerate is just your builder when you're out of shards. Okay. You also have an AoE. It's called Rain of Fire. It costs 3 soul shards, and it rains down on a targeted area. And you also have Havoc, which is good for 2 target damage. It's a 25-second cooldown, lasts 10 seconds, which is like a 40% uptime, and it causes any spells that you cast to duplicate to another target. So you could cast it on one target, switch to another target, and then cast Immolate. Both targets will get immolated. Then you can cast Chaos Bolts. Both targets will be hit by the Chaos Bolts, etc., etc. That's your core rotation in a nutshell. And for passives, what you're looking at is there's an explanation of the soul shards. It's a little bit different than the other 2 specs. The shards are broken up into fragments, and so you'll notice in the tooltips is that they each have different fragment generators. All of the spells that generate fragments have different costs of their generation. Conflagrate's the biggest at 5. Incinerate does 2, sometimes 3 on crits, and Immolate does 1 per tick, sometimes 2 on crits. That's the Soul Shard, and it costs 2 to do Chaos Bolts. The Soul Leech is just a passive shield that you don't have to think about. It's more survivability, mastery, increases your damage, but it also has a variable component where it sometimes does more damage, so it's kind of random. And this is new. Backdraft went back to being a passive, or at least it changed from the last build to this build. So Conflagrate now always gives you a reduced cast time, no matter what. You don't have to talent for it, it's just in your spellbook. Okay, and then here's the passive talents. This spec looks like it's been, what they're doing for BFA is making the left-hand column like all passives and stuff that doesn't really change your gameplay, and then the active talents are on the right. So like, I'll just start with the left-hand column first, just to do it easy mode. We have Eradication. Eradication makes it so Chaos Bolt has a component that increases your damage for 7 seconds, so that means you want to bolt together your Chaos Bolts and Conflagrate charges if you can. The next talent is Reverse Entropy. Reverse Entropy is it's a proc per minute that gives you 15% haste for 8 seconds. So just react to the haste. I'm going to skip the 45 and 75 tiers because they're utility talents. Fire and Brimstone, that's basically turns your builder spell, like your filler spell, into an AoE. It also has more shards if you hit multiple targets with that AoE. And then for the level 90 talent, we have Conflagrate. It turns into a dot, so that could be strategic with double dotting, as the dot does not stack, unless it's in pandemic range. And then we also have Soul Conduit, which is a passive that just makes it so that sometimes you don't like fully consume a charge, 15% chance. So that's your easy mode spec where you don't have to think, and you just kind of like play like you normally would. On the active talent side, we have, starting from the top, Flashover, which now that Backdraft is back to being just a passive in the tree, Flashover makes it so it has 2 charges again. So if you like the 2 charge style, you can still take that. You also have Soulfire. Soulfire is different in that it makes it so that for Demonology, it's like actually part of your rotation. You have to talent for it for Destruction. In Destruction, it always critically strikes, which is interesting, and critical strike chance increases that damage done, and it's on a cooldown. So you can't reduce the cast time on it like you can with Demonology, but it's a super hard hitting nuke. For example, here's it hitting a mob in action. You can see the tooltip here coming up. So, like I said, it always critically strikes. That's cool. The next thing we're looking at is we have Shadowburn is back. That's an active competing against the internal combustion active. What internal combustion does is it shrinks the remaining duration of Immolate, and then it adds to Chaos Bolt damage. So if you want bigger Chaos Bolts, but also casting Immolate more frequently, you want to take this. Otherwise, Shadowburn functions very similarly to Conflagrate. So it's a completely separate button, but same kind of system. It's a 12-second recharge. Unlike Conflagrate, it's not reduced by haste, and it does a little bit more damage than your Incinerate. So Conflagrate still takes priority over Shadowburn. However, Shadow Burn does reset if the target dies after using it within 5 seconds, so something to think about for targets that are in execute range, and it's also a pretty good soul shard generator, 3 fragments per cast. Skipping the utility row, we're looking at the level 60 row is kind of like AoE themed, so we have Cataclysm, it's a 30-second cooldown. It basically hits a target area and it afflicts anything in that target area with Immolate, which is pretty cool because Immolate, remember, gives you shard fragments, so it's some good burst and it's also a pretty good generator. Also note that it's a 30-second cooldown and Immolate is an 18-second duration, so I mean, if you really wanted to turn off your brain, you could turn this into a macro where you're doing Cataclysm on a 30-second reset and a cast sequence with Immolate, and so you'd only have to cast that button twice per 30 seconds, and it would keep Immolate on your target full time, no thinking required. Now, Rain of Fire, I'll go demonstrate Rain of Fire, is your AoE spell, right? Costs 3 soul shards. You place it on the ground, and then you can go back to casting normally, and it's just going to keep ticking on the ground. It's kind of an expensive cast. Well, you can replace it entirely with Hellfire. And what Hellfire does is, if you remember from back in the day, this hasn't really changed animations yet or functionality, but you basically just pulse AoE around you, and you can also cast that while moving. So that's pretty cool. If you take Hellfire, Rain of Fire gets replaced, and you can run over here and while running around cast that, and it's just going to slowly drain your shards while it's doing that AoE. It also drains your health, so it's one of those really high risk, big reward kind of factors because of the health drain on top of the amount of damage it's doing. I'm skipping the 75 because that's utility. In the level 90 row, you can choose to have Grimoire of Sacrifice, which gets rid of your demon and gives your spells a chance to do some damage, so if you want to play without a pet, that's still in the game. And then Grimoire of Supremacy is a good time for me to bring up the 1 cooldown that Destruction has. Currently, before talents, you have Summon Infernal. It's 1 cooldown, 1 soul shard. It's a 3-minute, kind of a long duration. It runs around for 30 seconds. And what you can do with this talent is improve its ability to do some burst damage with your synergy by, when you summon it for those 30 seconds, every soul shard that you spend will increase the damage of your chaos bolts. So for the 30 seconds, your chaos bolts are getting higher and higher. That's how that works. And then in the bottom row, you have a choice between Channel Demon Fire, which is a short-term cooldown. So Demon Fire, the way it works is you have like on the short-term cooldown, you launch bolts that randomly hit any target afflicted by Immolate. So it's good for single target. It's also good for as a filler spell for AoE, and it's just going to do some pulsing damage. And it's a channeled spell, so you have to sit there and channel it to shoot out all the little bolts at the targets. So I just want to show you what the animation looks like. Okay, targets afflicted by Immolate, channeling Demon Fire, and I'm just shooting little bolts at him. And then it's on cooldown. It's just something you want to put into your rotation that takes a little bit of priority over the Conflagrate, but Conflagrate as a charge system, so you want to actually press that first and then go back to pressing that, from what I can look. And then that's in the same row competing against Dark Soul. Dark Soul is just another cooldown. It increases your critical strike chance. It has some synergy with Soulfire. So if you take Dark Soul, you're going to be able to do some more damage with your during like the Soulfire cast, which is a 45-second cooldown. Dark Soul's a 2-minute. You can also layer this with other big cooldowns, like say you took Grimoire of Supremacy. You can also have the Summon Infernal spell, blow all of those on the pole, and you're going to be doing a lot of upfront burst damage. Here's the utility spells. Baseline, you have Command Demon. I think the tooltip, I don't know if it's supposed to be Shadow Word Bulwark. I think it's actually supposed to be Suffering, but that's okay. Fear. We also have the Summoning, all the different demons spells still in the game. You have Shadow Fury. It's a baseline for all Warlocks. I have an action bar hidden that has a bunch of your other utilities. We still have Banish, Enslave Demon for control. You have Unending Breath as a buff. You have Health Funnel, which can restore health to a demon. You can still battle res people with Soul Stone. I have Kill Rod for fun. You can still create Health Stones. Health Stones are buffed. They're 40% health now. And Ritual Summoning, you can still summon your friends. So that's all still there. And then the utility talents you're looking at is in the 45 row. You can take the passive that increases your shield that just automatically generates on you. And that's going to be Soul Leech, so Demon Skin. You can take Burning Rush, which converts your health into speed. You can toggle it on and off. Or you can take Dark Path, which sacrifices your health for shield. And Then we're looking at Mortal Coil. You can choose that over Dark Fury's reduced cooldown. So Shadow Fury is a 1 minute. It's a cast time now. 3 seconds done. You can make it a 45-second cooldown, or you can pick Mortal Coil, which is a Horrify, doesn't DR with other fears, or you can pick Demonic Circle, which I demonstrated in the other video. And yeah, that's everything in a nutshell. I'm gonna go blow up a mob with our big 3 minute cooldown, just so we can see what that looks like, summoning the Infernal. The Infernal still stuns, so it's a 3 minute cooldown, but it's a 2 second stun, unlike the 3 second stun for Shadow Fury. They do diminishing returns with one another, so 2 second stun into a Shadow Fury does not do that full stun on the targets. And yeah, once he's out, he just does damage for 30 seconds. I took a couple talents to increase that damage done. And then, if you can see here on his buffs, he also generates embers, or the soul shard fragments, so you're also getting more of your resource, which means more chaos bolts during his duration, which synergizes really well with Gremroar of Supremacy. Alright, and that's it for Destruction Warlocks.